Descent into Darkness, a Call of Cthulhu campaign.
Hello and welcome back to Deathwatch's Call of Cthulhu campaign, Descent into Darkness Season 4. This is Episode 6 and I am Keeper Travis. Let's get an introduction from our investigators and players before this train keeps on rolling.
I'm Brandon. I'll be playing Bartholomew Wentworth, and I'm on a train.
Almost. Yeah.
I'm Chris. I'm playing Charles Stanton, expedition and hunting guide extraordinaire, and I am also almost on a train.
I'm John, playing Joseph Thompson, president of the Arab lands, and I am heading to a train as well, but not the same one as Charles Stanton.
Self-styled president of the Arab lands.
Like to believe myself as such.
Do you trace your lineage from ancient, when it was like a Roman province or something like that?
Yeah.
You're actually a descendant of Constantine, or I don't know. Anyhow. All right, so actually nobody's on a train. In fact, we'll pick it up on Monday, February 13th in the evening with Mr. Thompson and Mr. Wentworth. You guys are in London, the great heart of the British Empire, and you have found your lodging for the night. You won't be able to leave until tomorrow morning at the earliest, and you're staying at the Ritz, fancy hotel there in London. Mr. Thomas, in the background, or Thompson, sorry, in the background, you had thought it might be advisable to seek out the expertise of a lawyer to double-check that contract from Standard Oil of New Jersey. So that's just something I've added to the expedition cost, right? The cost of a lawyer to look over that contract. And it did end up looking okay. But as for the rest of the night, it's up to you what you want to do. Perhaps take a gander at the Liber Ivanus again.
Where
He's a non-believer.
do we
He's
put
safer,
where do we put the money that we've gotten for the upfront?
Well,
Does that go
that's
into
up
our
to,
assets?
Mr. Wentworth. For now, I just put it in sort of the running total of expenses and or credits and debits for this whole expedition.
Mm-hmm.
So far, you're only down like a few $1,000s with all the cash infusions you've received and whatnot.
Every time you mention like a Cthulhu Mythos tome, you just want to casually browse it. For some reason in my head, it's like some dang show where they're like, oh, you want to just do coke and speed?
Right.
Just casually here in the middle of throwing some LSD too.
Well, if you constantly hustle Mr. Thompson away from any exposure to the mythos, he can stay a non-believer. But as soon as he sees something that he cannot unsee, all of this knowledge will slam home.
I'm just like talking about like the effects it's going to potentially have on like wherever you are. So I don't know. Like I'm just not one of those people where the idea of like getting drunk in public and acting stupid isn't the fun part. And the Mythos tome fills that same like section of my mind. Oh, I'm just gonna drop acid here in the Ritz and go crazy, cut off someone's ear, eat some hair.
I will continue my quest for knowledge, though, because a fun Monday night for Joseph Thompson is dropping acid in the Ritz.
He looks like it.
But I'm all out of acid.
Time to read this Mythos tome.
All right, so now that you've gotten acclimated,
go around and ask people like, "Hey, could you read this section?" I don't quite understand it.
Dude, he looks like
just at the really messed up parts.
That looks like his wife has just walked in. He's like, "Yes, I'll have a coffee. Make it black." Then he reads the tome, and she comes back with his coffee, and he just he's freaking out.
Peels her face
he
up.
Looks like the kind of guy who's only been read Mythos tomes and read Mythos tomes his entire life. He doesn't know anything. He'd lose sanity if he read something regular.
Dr. Seuss.
They're my dime store novels.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you've grown acclimated to the voice and style that this is written in. So you're starting to enter into the main part of the
I'd like
the
to
work.
add one extra bit of insanity, and I will. The voice in my head is that of Monroe.
Okay. He just keeps saying, fascinating.
The narrator.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
That's why I'm still a non-believer by the end of it.
Right.
I read this whole book, and I didn't learn anything, but it was fascinating.
Yeah. All right, so anyhow, you start to get into the main part of the story. The book itself seems to be broken into sections that are kind of like biographical, and then there's formulas and little stories within stories. It's kind of hard to keep your place sometimes when it'll just diverge into something entirely different. But it begins with the training of a sorcerer named Ibon and his attempts to find the city, Irem, where he can tutor under a magician named Culthalgemin, or Culthalgemin. Ibon originally hailed from a land the author calls Hyperborea. You can give an occult or history roll if you'd like.
Well, he reads dime store novels,
Right.
so he knows what Hyboria is.
That's where they all were set.
Oh.
That's a big negative, buddy. My history was the same, so I figured I'd go with this one since I might benefit a little more.
Well, you can get by the context of it that it is a land of some kind, like a continent or something. But you've never heard of that in relationship to the real Earth, so you don't know where this land would be. Ibon in this story soon makes contact with a being from a higher phase named Sadokwe. And here is another note from Mr. Monroe.
As you should take these blurbs from Monroe, send them to Justin, make him record it. That way you can just play
You
it.
can read it.
Yeah,
I don't want to touch a
have him
sore
read it.
spot. Make him.
Constantly
Play his
drag
character.
him back into his misery.
Well, I'll read it to you while we wait for Roll20 to wake up. Monroe writes, original Latin name Sadokwe could be the basis for the Zagua figure we have been hearing about lately. Other corruptions might be Sathaka or Sathagua, always described as toad-like, or alternatively, furry and mammalian, perhaps both. This is a pristine myth, evidently. However, this figure certainly bears a resemblance to the Egyptian god of darkness, Kek, or bringer in of the light, frog or man with a frog head. He symbolizes the unknown and chaos, the female counterpart to Kek named Keket, or bringer in of the darkness, who presided over the hours of twilight when the sun was setting, often depicted as a snake. Snakes and frogs. Fascinating.
Do I read Keck as lol?
If you'd like. Dr. Andrews would.
Thompson comes to with the gun already in his mouth.
Right. Okay. And there's also a passage of note.
That's what happens when you hear Monroe's voice for too long.
But then the gun is just a rolled up flyer.
It shoots the flyers. That's all
It's
it
flyers
shoots.
all the way down.
Yeah. It's a gun made out of flyers shooting flyers.
Here's Monroe's scribblings. And here's a passage from the Liber Ivanus, which I like to use when you go back into ancient writing, the Dan Carlin voice. The ageless one turned to me and held me with his gaze and spake, Young one, the greatest trick of those that worship him, who will come again, is that they can be found where you would last look for them. I asked where such a place doth lie, and he smiled greatly and spake, The city of pillars, called in the tongue of man Irem by those who dare whisper it. Those that know better simply call it the nameless city. And that is enough, for such is the taint of evil and death upon it. It lies many moons to the south in a vast desert cursed by the gods, called in the Arabic tongue Rub al-Khali, which means the empty quarter.
Rub al-Khali.
But it sticks out to you for obvious reasons because that's the where you're heading, at least according to Mr. Wentworth, assuming he shared that information.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, they believe he did.
I like the idea of him just
We're going.
We're going to
East.
Irem, right?
going east out of. Away
You
from
know where
here.
that is, don't you? Everybody knows where it is. Of course you do.
old Thompson thinks he's going to Japan or China.
That's one of them places in France, right? We're almost there.
All right, Mr. Wentworth, you two are at the Ritz there, although you're not in your room trying to discover darkness itself. What do you even do in your room by yourself?
5-finger fillet.
Well, I mean, I still had those books to keep reading, so.
You do have a portrait given to you by Lady Waverly when you guys left each other.
Okay.
Like a small
Photo.
Okay.
photo, right?
That's sweet of her.
Whose
I've
face?
already forgotten her.
Which it's the 1920s equivalent of filtered.
Yeah.
So, and soon your memory begins to warp.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah.
She was a looker, wasn't she?
She's way more beautiful than I thought.
But anyhow, yeah. So you're in there, and there was one thing that Lord Stourton had said, that if you did require more help, or you thought you did, there was a man here in London by the name of Nigel Stedford,
Yeah.
who was instrumental in the expeditions, although failed expeditions
Well, yeah, I want to
from
talk.
years past.
I want to talk to him.
Okay. Yeah, you can. You didn't get an address from Lord Stourton, but it should be a simple matter of checking the directory, which calls for a use library skill. Or you could try to use your social graces.
Use library is the most dangerous skill in this game.
I think it was wasn't it one of your motivations was to get a better use library?
Yeah.
Don't do it, Brandon. It's dangerous.
Oh, I mean,
Johann was arrested on multiple occasions for his use library.
So the hang-up comes that their directories are laid out a little bit different here across the pond
yeah.
in jolly old Great Britain than what you're used to. And also you're kind of old school, so your directions were like, go up there past the gnarled tree, you'll see the split rock
Right.
cabins just to the left, that sort of thing.
But it's a European left,
Left,
so,
right.
or English left, not like us Yanks.
Yep. They've been doing left that way for a lot longer than you upstart Americans. Yeah, so you're befuddled by that, so you'll need to seek out some help if you wish to pursue this further. Or you could give up on the entire enterprise altogether and go back to your room and drink whiskey.
No, I'll keep searching.
All right.
Knock on some doors or
Couldn't
whatever.
go to the library because he didn't know how to make a proper left.
Well, you're in the lobby of the Ritz, and this directory that's calling for your use library is just their basically like phone book, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. And but there's also the guy in the lobby.
Yeah, right. They got like a concierge or something.
Right.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah,
talk to him.
give me a credit rating or a praise as you walk up to him.
Just hit him in the face with 10 grand.
I need to play an insane person right now.
Well, my credit rating is pretty low too.
Oh,
Yeah, he's like, sir, you can if you go down the street a few blocks, you'll be able to find a lodging that's
more suitable.
suitable.
I'm staying here.
Oh,
I have a room here.
do you have your room key?
I'm in disguise. Yeah, I have my room key.
Oh, terribly sorry, sir.
What's your problem anyway?
Oh, my mistake. I just thought you were
Riffraff.
Yes. Did you hear that?
I didn't say it. I'd never say that to a customer.
In any case, what can I help you with today?
I would like to meet with a man named Nigel Stedford who lives here in London, but I don't know exactly where he lives or how to contact him.
So you're saying to me that you need help with our directory system?
Yes.
Very well. And he comes over to help you look through it, and he's like, "What was the name? Stedford, did you say?"
Yes.
Well, you see, it's quite simple. The last name, it's sorted by last name alphabetically, and by class, and then wealth, and then the pedigree of their lineage. And so you see, once you
Current
go,
noble rank.
Yeah.
it says here Stedford, but of this rank, turn to page 73, and there you will see Nigel Stedford. It appears he lives on the suburbs of London here, in a quaint little house.
Thank you.
I assume it's quaint because that's a quaint part of town. You're welcome, sir. Any other completely routine tasks I can help you with today? We're gonna pull the campaign off its rails.
He's
like-
going to end up in prison.
How do I create the perfect murder against this?
Yeah. No, that'll be all. Thank you.
As I stated earlier, it's a quaint side of town. You should be most suited for that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have a good impression
Feel right at home.
of London, but
Well, it's because you turned the pages in an American manner. You could have found it if you turned the pages in an English manner.
What is chewing up all my computer usage here?
Close the prawn tabs.
Yeah. I can't. I'll lose my spot.
Yeah.
All right. In any case, you can, with the address in hand, you can hire a cab,
okay.
to drive you out there. And they tell you some amount in funny money that you don't quite understand.
Yeah.
And you pay it because you have some amount that you've had exchanged. And it is well outside of London to where you can almost be convinced to be in the countryside. Except if you look to the south, then you'll see the spread of London there. But the house does prove to be a quaint little cottage.
Okay.
And you can see a nice cheery light burning on the inside.
All right. So I'll go knock on the door.
Okay. You hear like just a minute, and some shuffling around, and then a gentleman opens the door. Well, suffice to say, he's a kindly, although rugged-looking man in his 50s, you would say. Has a grandfatherly look about him. Everything's gone to gray, perhaps late 50s, but he still seems to be in tip-top physical condition. But he's like, good evening. What can I do for you?
Going on an expedition to find the lost city of pillars. You want to help?
Goodness, you Americans are abrupt.
And I'll introduce myself. I'm Bartholomew Wentworth.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Wentworth.
In the employ of Dr. Andrews from America.
Something that Lord Stourton has put you up to?
It is.
Oh, very good. Well,
and he mentioned your name. So we're here. We're about to board a train on the morrow. And I thought I might speak with you and see what information or aid you can provide.
Yes. Well, perhaps we should have a rather stiff drink over this. So, care to come in?
Thank you.
So when you come in, his little, basically one main room cottage with an adjoining bedroom and a kitchenette, and you can see a well-tended garden out in the back. It's sort of like an English fantasy land, domestic English fantasy land back there.
Right.
But in his main room, it does have the air of a bachelor, not in its that it's dirty, but it's, kind of messy in a sense because they'll have like books and maps and things everywhere. So, Irem, then, is it?
Yes.
Do you have any idea what that will be like, Mr. Wentworth? What kind of undertaking you're about?
Yes, I have a general idea.
And you say you're working on behalf of a Dr. Andrews?
Yes. Wallace Andrews was approached by Lord Stourton, and Dr. Andrews chose me to go in his stead on this expedition.
And you're being handsomely rewarded for such a undertaking, I presume.
Well,
so it kind of looks something like that.
That's the hope.
So what will you do when you get into the empty quarter and all that money you've been promised won't seem to matter so much anymore? What's going to push you to the next stage, do you think?
Well, to be honest, the money means very little to me. I am in service of Dr. Andrews, and it's faithful service to him that is my true motivation in this venture.
Interesting. I have known a few strange men like you in my life. Never quite understood them, but they did seem to be solid and dependable. I see. So what can I help you with then?
Well, any information you might provide. I have heard it said that you have attempted this expedition.
Yes.
So anything you can tell me about your experiences might help us to avoid any unpleasant pitfalls that might have befallen you.
Well, how many are you planning on taking?
Hundreds.
Hundreds of men by the time you get there, because we're gaining at the rate of 2 per day.
By the way, yeah. No, right? I think we're 18 for his, so, 30-ish maybe.
Well, that is to the good, I should think, because the Bedu, if your group party is big, will perhaps not attack you out of hand, unless they happen to be bigger. So that's one problem. Do you have a bunch of fighting men with you?
Yes.
And then the other problem, the longest we made it into the empty quarter was 4 days, and we found nothing. So you must plan for that. longer than 4 days.
Yes.
It's nearly the limit of what a camel can handle before it needs to be watered again.
Right. Yeah, we're planning for that. We understand the distances involved in the terrain, so I don't suspect that supplies or camels should be any problem.
But the main thing, I think, is I don't believe the place exists. I think it's an Atlantis or of the sort.
I see.
It might just be a fool's errand.
But there are reports of people who have found it.
Are there?
Yeah, right. The books I've been reading.
Yes, I know Lord Stourton was quite taken with it, but 4 days in a desert on a camel, that's a little over 100 miles, nearly a third of the way across the empty quarter. I just don't see where it would be or how it would be there.
You think that if it was there, you would have found it?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless it's buried. It's always a possibility.
Well, and we are bringing along people that have some equipment that might be useful for uncovering buried ruins. But you must understand, Mr. Stedford, whether it exists or not means very little to me. I've been tasked with looking for it, so that's what I intend to do.
Oh, I understand. Duty. Yes. I'm just saying perhaps you might consider when you get there to have a little poke around, and when nothing can be found, wash your hands of the place and leave before things get too troublesome.
Well, that's good advice, and I thank you. Would you like to come with us?
Yes, I would.
You forgot the most important part of journeying into a foreign locale. Is when you don't find what you're looking for, you take your anger out on the locals.
Right. This is the, if you guys ever watched Parks and Rec when Ron meets Ron.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's like, what's your name? Ron?
Right.
Last name? Dunn? Or is that your last name,
So
or are you done
he's,
speaking? Both.
Both.
He's the perhaps happier version of
I can't remember his name all of a sudden.
Charles Stanton.
No.
Oh, Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott. Yeah, he's the Sam Elliott.
Yeah.
Well, what exactly is it you?
Right.
Ain't nothing. It was just a wonderful journey, and everyone had fun.
Yes, I quite would like to come along. I speak the local language. Been on the trip myself a couple times for the first half. In so far as things have remained unchanged, it was 20 years ago now, and I was a much healthier man, and that was a different place back then, part of the Ottoman Empire. So I don't know to what we were, but the Bedo are eternal. That I do understand to some degree.
Well, you're welcome to come with us, but you should know that we're leaving tomorrow.
Oh, I can be there.
There's
What time?
Little time to prepare. I'll tell them the time
Okay.
we're supposed to be on the train.
Yeah, so basically you're taking a ship across the English Channel to Boulogne, France.
Bologna.
No, they don't have bologna. They have Boulogne. Sorry, I had to close my notes. Let me check the pronunciation on that. Yeah, Boulogne. Looks like bologna in France. And he's like, yes, I will meet you at the station. It was nice to meet you, Mr. Worth. I hope this journey goes well for us.
It was a pleasure to meet you, too. I'll be glad to have you along. Do you have a rifle?
I do.
Excellent. Make sure to bring that.
It's right here in my inventory.
It's in my pocket.
It's just a Derringer. He has to have the opposite of
Yes.
what Stanton has.
It's a Derringer rifle.
Yeah.
Derringer rifle.
It's like the Joker's pistol.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, you head back to the Ritz, and you can call it a day there. And let's jump across the Mediterranean to Cairo, same day, to Charles Stanton. So you're all settled in for the time being, Mr. Stanton, but this is no leisure visit, as you know. The work of planning this jaunt into the desert must now begin. Some of the problems of the day are hiring a doctor to fill the void left by your wounded regular, and also someone who speaks Arabic, or perhaps both qualities in the same person. Following that, you and Ibrahim can take a look over the maps again and create a more in-depth travel plan, but maybe not today, because did you send Ibrahim to try to seek out passage, or to just gather different supplies you thought you might need?
I think it was passage.
Okay.
Currently, we were saving off some of the supplies I know for when we get to, where is that? Closer to the...
Yeah, to like Sana'a in Yemen.
But this is a big enough city. We'd probably find like preserves or non-perishables easier here. So
well,
that'd
if you
be
want
tomorrow.
a particular flavor that matches the taste, then certain things would have to be acquired here because they wouldn't have them in country. For example, like if you had a preference for some type of jam, that they wouldn't have access to that fruit, you might get it here. So yeah, some things are gathered here. But in the case of seeking passage, Ibrahim will have to travel up to Port Said and poke around there for the day.
But I can still go. I think we ended like at nighttime for me.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, I picture myself like out on the balcony, maybe liquor or not, depending on what the laws are. And
you were watching the jazz going on.
Yeah, and I'll be kind of going over like the maps, busting out a compass and measuring how far I'm going to expect to travel and how many men are going to die each day.
Yeah. Well, we can look here at so according to information given to you from Mr. Wentworth, that you would come in at Al-Hodeidah, which is right there.
And is Yemen currently in a state of flux as well, or is it fairly peaceful?
So basically, once the Ottoman Empire was thrown out of the Arabian Peninsula, there were people there that had claim to that region because prior to the Ottomans, it was ruled by some people for hundreds of years, right? So it's the supposed descendants of that trying to set up an independent kingdom of Yemen, which is the case. You don't know what the current events of Hodeidah are. The last you had heard, it was underneath the kingdom of Yemen's control, but they have been warring with their southern neighbor, Aden, which is a British protectorate.
All right. So there's a chance we're going to have to fight across the whole of the country as well. Possibly,
or you'll just have to skirt around conflicts. But looking at the map, assuming you land here in Hodeidah after you get passage down across the Red Sea, the next point of interest would bring you up to the capital of Yemen, which is called Sana'a. And that is so going from Al-Hodeidah to Sana'a is about 140 miles with an 8,000 foot elevation change.
Oh, nice.
For a sea level from here up to Sana'a. Now, with a little bit more research, you might be able to determine if there is roads that could be used in that section so you don't have to hoof it. Because on foot, you're looking at game mechanic wise as move rate times 2 miles per day is the base speed. So if you're 6 or 7, then you're looking at 12 to 14 miles without pushing it, right? On a camel, 25 to 35 miles per day, although you can push a camel to up to 50, but as you know, what's gained in the swings is lost in the roundabouts. So usually you do that if you got to make that final stretch and they're going to rest right after.
All right, so I'm going to just start figuring that we'll start starving before we ever hit the empty quarter.
There are lots of, even on this map, there are little notations here and there, but you don't know. It could very well be they're just saying there's a mosque here, or is there a village here, right? If it's a mosque, it could be put there just if it was a standardized journey, you make it here to this time that they pray, and here's your mosque, that sort of thing. But if it's a village, it's usually because there's a well there. However, you don't know much about that part of Yemen and whether you're actually in the desert at that point. So, because it might be a different type of terrain by the coast and in the highlands.
Alrighty. Yeah, I'm going to figure that, man. Yeah, I'll try to get as much provisions as we can within limits of the ships before we ever set out for Yemen. Because I'm going to figure that the more rural it gets, because Sana'a might be the
last point of civilization, yeah.
Yeah, and they probably, depending on their feelings towards the English or white men in general, they might not be too welcoming.
Yeah.
And the prices might skyrocket.
Yeah, from past dealings in Africa that the relations are patchwork. It's really dependent sometimes down to the tribe about how they might feel about foreigners. So that's something you have to count on and sort of walk softly as you go, because it just depends. One step could put you into somebody that had specific and violent interactions with British soldiers, and they might be, they might happily take it out on you.
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything else you wanted to do with that evening, or shall we move on from February 13th?
No, other than maybe, what's the kid's name?
Francesco Orfeo.
Yeah, other than I'll probably do most of my musings aloud. He can listen or not.
Okay.
I don't really care. But the idea would be, if, just seeing how he is kind of going to react to most of it. And I'd also, tell him what I'm doing with the compass, measuring distance.
Yeah, when you mentioned your misgivings about keeping supplied, already running out of food in desert, he does caution you to look out for quicksand. Mr. Stanton, you got to watch out for the quicksand.
Quicksand isn't nearly as quick as people make it out to be, boy.
Oh, that's not what I've heard.
And where exactly did you encounter quicksand in your little... Whereabouts are you even from?
Italy, in the north.
In the north. And the quicksand there, treacherous?
Only for those who don't know what they're looking for, and I always knew what I was looking for. That's why I never came across it.
Stanton will take a drag of his cheroot and toss back the rest of the...
I was just going for some chuckles there. He's a little bit more respectful and fearful given your last interaction, because you did put the fear of a lot of stuff in him upon his hiring, as a good boss/foreman would do. But yeah, he's happy to listen. He is observing him. You can see he's sort of a quick study, but in a
do you know your numbers?
Way. No, he doesn't.
Always a pity that. Yeah. I'll start giving him like a simple rundown.
Okay.
On like how a compass works.
All right.
And measuring distance on the map for him.
Yeah, he knows his numbers up to like being able to count, right? But any more sophisticated or basic math would throw him off, and he'll ask a lot of very basic questions when you're giving him the rundown of the compass and whatnot and measurements, and he's like, why is this? Why is it that?
And like for the most part, like I figure Stanton's already gone over this stuff a bunch of times already, so it's just him kind of going over and maybe giving voice to it. He's hoping to catch something that he's missed.
Probably helps him think too. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we will move on to Tuesday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Mr. Thompson and Mr. Wentworth, is the day of your departure on the Orient Express bound for Constantinople. Day 1 in your journey will see you ferried across the English Channel to Boulogne in France, where you will board the Orient Express. By the end of the day, you will have traveled all the way to Milan in northern Italy. Most of the train cars are sleeping cars. I shared that handout with you last time, right?
Yeah.
That kind of gives you the layout of how they work. But there's also a dining car in which excellent food is prepared by a world-famous chef and can be had at most hours. It's not all the guests come in and they eat at once, because it is still just a dining car, so it can't really service the whole train at once. But more importantly, there is a bar car for your libation requirements. Compared to the RMS Mauritania, boarding the Orient Express, you immediately get the sense that there will be way less in the way of entertainment besides what you bring with you and what countryside can be seen scrolling by out the window. And in the early part of the journey, you're just seeing like low rolling hills and plains, and occasionally a scar from the Great War. Things are growing back, but you can definitely see the dimples from shelling and whatnot in the land in the far distance. And by later in the day, you see the jagged snow-capped Alps, which become visible for most of the afternoon. But one thing we didn't decide on, Mr. Wentworth, is who you wanted your cabin mate to be.
Thompson.
Okay. Can you give me a hard spot hidden roll?
Failure.
You want one from me too, or just him?
No, just him. All right, so aboard the train, as I said, there's not much to do besides what you've brought with you. But Mr. Thompson, you're in there. For most people who may not travel a lot, the first day is rather entertaining, just to look out the window in your cabin there and see country you've never seen before. There is a lot that reminds you of home about France, but, subtly different things.
Yeah.
But at some point while you guys are in your cabin there, young Thaddeus Grunwald from the Miskatonic University and the secretary at the Society for the Exploration of the Unexplained taps on your cabin door.
Mr. Grunwald, come in. What can I do for you?
Well, thank you, Mr. Wentworth. I was just wanting to talk to Mr. Thompson here, but I did have a question for you. I know you didn't want me to publish in any of the publications from Miskatonic, but what are your feelings about, say, a write-up for the SEU's purposes, you know? I was thinking, since most people think it's all nonsense anyways, it would be a good cover, you think? And since Dr. Andrews is a member, maybe he'd be okay with it.
Well, I suppose that should be fine, but I'll want to read anything you write before you
Oh, yes, of
publish
course. Well, anyhow, I just had a few questions for Mr. Thompson. It was just some little odds and ends over old events long past. But Mr. Thompson, it always kind of bugged me about your report about the Corbett incident and how it differed so much from the other investigators. Did you truly believe that nothing happened there?
Well, I wouldn't say getting pushed out a window by a mad German old man is nothing, but and as far as the claims of others, I didn't see anything to support that.
Well, the others claim that it was a bed hurled telekinetically across the room that knocked you out the window, and you think there's no truth to that claim?
When have you ever known a bedroll to fly across a room and knock a person out a window?
Good point. I never have known that, but I want to believe that something like that could happen given the right circumstances. But I find it equally unbelievable that Johann Mueller, which we both know, would have pushed you out a window as well. I mean, he was an old man.
And you've never seen an old man do despicable things, so you're ready to believe it to be a bedroll?
Oh, he was harmless. I spoke to him that summer, or the last summer, I suppose it would be, before he left, I guess. I went back home or something. And he's just a kindly old man.
Young Thaddeus, you have a lot to learn. As,
I have no
the
knowledge
old
that he
and frail are not always
killed me in a mad vision or something like that.
The old and frail are not always so helpless.
Yes, but to your previous point, where you are appealing to the laws of physics, we still have to adhere to those, and there's no way that man could have pushed you out the window. So I'm just asking you again: is there nothing you can think of? Have you considered perhaps some hypnosis or something to get at a repressed memory?
Are you versed in hypnosis?
No, but I've heard of it.
Well, then maybe one day.
So what do you think about, so to discredit Vincent Newell's account, which is, as I said, very different than yours, is there something you know about him that would sort of bring me around to your thinking?
I'll pull out my knife.
Vincent Newell is me. Dr. Andrews is me. I am them. I will not be spoken of in the past tense.
Vincent was a good man. He was a little on the shaky side, though, as I'm sure that his regression back to farm life would tell you, as he wasn't stable enough to cope with what happened in that house. But I'm sure even he would agree that those sneaky Germans, and you can't trust them.
Yes, that is odd. He was, I spoke briefly with him at the meetings. He wanted to pursue some studies there at the college, but then the events occurred that summer of 1920, and he flees back to Idaho. And I can't help but think that there must be something there. And I scour all of the reports that come in, and many of them are, I would agree with you, stretching physical possibility. But this is the closest I've ever felt like I've come to something that could be real. And I've really been thinking about, when we're done with this journey here, going back to that Corbett house and poking around, if the current tenants will let me. But I'll probably belay that in favor of something else if you really insist that there's nothing there. Besides sneaky Germans and leaky gas.
Who were in the front yard smoking at the time of the incident.
He was basically your first responder after you came out the window.
I'll try to curb, because deep down I know it wasn't Johann who did this, but I still don't have any other explanation for it. So when he brings up wanting to go and investigate himself, kind of tense up a little, and then as he says that that he may not, depending on what I say, as I'll relax slightly and say it's best left in the past. There's absolutely nothing in that house for a brilliant mind such as yourself. As if you're going to concern yourself with something, and I'll look around, the cabin, be like, why don't you concern yourselves with the mysteries of
the Liber
the Europes, right? France and Britain have lots of them. There's no need for the Corbett house. It's just an old house with crazy Germans.
He looks at you and purses his lips, and he's like, okay, Mr. Thompson, I'll do just that. But give me let's do a charm roll to see if you can conceal this deeper belief that you have.
Trauma.
Hard success.
Finally, first success for the night.
Congratulations. So yes, he. You can tell at the end of the conversation that he's with some disappointment given up on the notion. He's like, just another dead end like everything else. I suppose all I'll be known for is my studies on the migratory patterns of locusts and not the great untold truths of the universe. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I'll leave you to your...
There now, lad.
What are you reading there?
Huh? Just a dime store novel.
Oh.
Bound in flesh and inked in human blood.
No, I put a different cover over it.
Right. Not a mythos tome.
Yeah.
It's one of those
normal book
covers that you used to make back in grade school.
That's what it says on
not a bad idea for
one cover is normal book, and on the other side I just wrote in not a mythos tome. Yeah.
Evil.
Not evil. He's like, all right. Well, anyhow, you were going to say something, Mr.
Just try to tell him to keep some optimism.
Keep his chin up.
You.
Yeah, he looks optimistic, man.
We're heading into, the deepest forgotten desert. Who knows what we may find?
Ancient.
You're right, Mr. Wentworth. You're absolutely right. I will focus on that.
And remember, you're not likely to survive.
No, Mr. Wentworth, I'm going to be the only one who survives. Look at my face.
He's the type that goes into that situation and grows fat.
Right. How are you getting fat? There is no food or water left.
Different metabolism.
Right. Different.
One that thrives on
non-Euclidean metabolism.
Yeah, non-Euclidean metabolism. That's good.
All right. Is there anything aboard the train that either of you want to do for this day? I already have it marked here, Mr. Thompson, that you will likely continue reading Liber Ivanus. But what about you, Mr. Wentworth?
Yeah, until I've finished up, I'll just keep reading the books that I got from.
Giving him like a fuller.
Yeah, and after I've finished reading those ones that Lord Stourton gave me, I'll start passing them around to other people that are on the expedition, so they have more friends. Probably start with
Dr. Francis Morgan. He showed some interest in it when he came and told you about the Ptolemy maps and whatnot. Okay, yeah. He's thrilled to receive them from you. In his study, although he's sharing a room, or in his cabin, he's sharing a room with Grunwald, and he kind of gives a pleading look in his eyes. Can you do something about this, Mr. Wentworth? But it's unstated. And you think it'll build his character, so it's to the good.
So, Thompson, I'm sharing my books. You gonna share yours?
I am gonna ask when he comes back. One of the various times that he comes back is, how well did you know Mr. Monroe?
Who's gonna ask who that?
You, Bartholomew Wentworth.
Oh, I never.
So tell me, Bartholomew. Did you know Mr. Monroe well?
I never met the man. I never made his acquaintance, unfortunately.
And after encouraging
this is the real scary one,
young Thaddeus to not let go of the mysteries of the world, is there something deeper that you are hoping to find in Irem, if we do find it?
No, I'm hoping to find something that will satisfy whatever Dr. Andrews' purposes are out here, whatever that may be. It would be interesting to find an ancient lost city. I wouldn't be disappointed if we did. At the end of the day, I think ancient lost cities are just ancient lost cities. I don't think there's, there might be interesting things to learn from them. Different forms of architecture, treasures to be found, written works or art.
Yeah, some of the companion books you brought along to give a fuller reading of Lord Stourton's duology, they go into things like Petra, which is up in not necessarily where you're going, but it's in
Jordan.
In Jordan. And if you were going to do an educated guess based off of that, it would be like Roman architecture or Greek architecture. That sort of type of thing you might find out there.
Right. Sort of like the some of the pictures I might have seen of like Alexandria or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think the most famous one from Petra they used in the Last Crusade, it was that where they go into the temple where the Crusaders are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what will you do if we do find some ancient mystery?
Well, obviously we'll bring back what we can, make a full report to our benefactors. And if we find treasure, then we'll load up on that and bring it back. We'll be filthy rich.
Minus, of course, the men's lot. And...
Yeah.
Because I myself don't hold much to the mysteries of the universe or the these cult teachings, but I have seen some weird things again, and not as explainable. But I'm still of the belief that that everything with a certain amount of knowledge can be explained.
Well, I don't know how far I believe that, but certainly most things. There is still some mystery in the world.
That's the only mystery. As what this is 1920?
1922.
1922. So what, we still got 6 years, I think, before before Germany starts really rabble-rousing again. Or at least the grumblings of the leadership of the rumors of the overthrow.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, the only mystery that to me is how mankind can be so brutal to each other.
He said with a impassionate gaze into your soul.
The only mystery to me is why they aren't more often.
I used to be full of life like that, like young Thaddeus, but now, as you can see, I'm a dead inside 38-year-old salesman.
I like to think when Travis was saying that, like, some sort of emotion from the trauma of the Corbett house, it was just his jaw, like, slightly clenching, but his eyes remained unchanged and unblinking.
All right, shall we carry on with your skim reading of the Liber Ivanus, Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Thompson. I don't know why I keep trying to change your name.
Well,
so the story
as
continues.
The story goes on, names change.
He'll just be Mr. Tom.
Along with sanities.
So the story continues, expanding the nature and character of Sadoque or Sathagua, so that you have come to understand that this being has dangerous appetites. Nevertheless, Ibon is able to commune with the god and gain forbidden knowledge. This section includes an illustration of the toad-like being. Let me share that with you. Here you are.
Well, that looks like something worthy enough to sacrifice a snake man to.
So in the safety of the cabin, with just the sound of the train tracks coming from deep below, the rhythm actually kind of helps to transport your imagination into this deep, dark lair that's being described of this entity. So you get something startlingly close to what people such as Mr. Monroe and Johann Mueller have experienced firsthand. And although it's not shown in the illustration, it is described that there are these attendants around Sathagua, great and black pseudopods reaching from large basins, but the nature of the creature is never fully revealed. And there is another note from Mr. Monroe. So in this one, he says, I have come to believe that this work was not originally written in Latin. The vernacular is familiar and maddeningly odd at the same time. Every phrase requires an enormous amount of effort to decipher the author's meaning. Given the geographical locales mentioned by the author, this work was likely originally written in Aramaic or possibly Greek, and this is but a translation. And there's also another passage of note. So from the Liber Ivanus. After the 236th cut, Kith Canaan spoke of the holy words he swore he received from he who will come again. He cried aloud that during his 18 years of wandering, he traveled to many places and saw many wondrous sights. He names much, and many scribes filled a legion of scrolls with his recollections. But once he began to speak of the time of his coming, all were expelled from the cavern, save for a handful of priests and myself. It was then that Kith Canaan confessed his lie. Verily, he had not been blessed with the dreams of he who will come again at all, but instead learnt of them from a ruined temple in the haunted desert city of Irem. There he had been seeking the shrines of Nug and Yeb, two of the greatest young. On returning to the surface, he lost his way and soon came across a large temple to he who will come again. There he beheld the grand paintings of long-dead Culthalgemin, which showed the stars and maps of the world as it looked in elder times. From memory of those paintings, he was able to show us where sunken Rilye doth lie beneath the waves. As for the time, he had only a slight understanding of how the heavens move, so the exact time of greatness was unknown to him. After recounting his tale, mercy was shown to the heretic. His lying tongue was cut out, his eyes that had witnessed holies not meant for him were removed, and he was given to a servant of he who will come again to be punished as he saw fit. And that's your reading for the day. So across the Mediterranean in Cairo on Valentine's Day, once again, you start your day, Mr. Stanton, in the comfort of your hotel room. You have the maps spread out from the day before. Ibrahim arrived sometime in the early morning and had a pot of tea going. And he says,
"Boy, take note. This is your job from this point forward."
Right.
Ibrahim has more important things to do.
So yeah, Ibrahim. He says, "I found a steamer, boss, called a Nemean Lion. Can take us across the Red Sea whenever you're ready." The rates he quoted were about $9 per person and $5 per 100 pounds to make the trip. 2-day trip, apparently.
Do I know that we have oil riggers?
Yes, by now you do. Yeah. You got it like at the tail end of last night, probably like right before you went to bed. You'd got all the thoughts out of your head, and then here comes more people, more weight. You're like, okay.
That damned, what is it, Bartholomew, probably going to have a whole freaking menagerie by the time we gets here. Have to make way for an elephant. Did you factor in the rigging equipment, Ibrahim?
We have a rough estimate. We can settle on it when we actually leave. He's taking a trip to do something, but then he'll be back around the time we expect Wentworth to be here. So,
well, it's not me who's paying for it, so make the arrangements. Keep looking just in case we need a second boat.
Yes, boss.
Good job.
So taking up where you left off last night, looking at your maps. So the next stretch from Sana'a to a place called Marib, which you could make a hard history roll if you have any sort of history, or you can skip it entirely if you're...
History? No.
Yeah.
No, I'd have to, it's all navigation probably for me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this is a 114-mile stretch that descends from the highlands to an elevation of about 3,400 feet above sea level. There are no known roads suitable for automobiles past this point, you think, because now you're entering into the wilds of the Arabian Peninsula, which means that camels will have to be obtained in Sana'a, probably at the very latest, but maybe preferably there if you can find trucks to take you up to Sana'a from Al-Hudaydah. So anyhow, on camels, you can expect, as I've quoted a few times now, 25 to 35 miles a day. But you'll be coming out of the highlands, and that means you'll be getting into the heat in March. And you can roll the navigation based off that to try to make some guesswork of what that will be like.
I can't even begin to fathom how hot it's going to be.
Well, there are general rules of thumb, like you can use the latitude orientation on a map to just do some guess, but then elevation comes into it. So, and then also the distance from water, which helps regulate temperatures. So when you look at the Arabian Peninsula, it's obvious to you why there's a big desert in the center of it, because it's away from water. There's no big bodies of water in there, and it's low elevation. So it's just like a good mix of it's going to be hot.
It's going to be a giant frying pan.
Even in hopefully early March, if everything goes well, when you would be into that station, that part of it. So yeah, and then also you do, when you think you've had enough of maps and whatnot, and you might do something else. For example, you've seen outside your hotel there that there is a park called Ezbakia Park. It's just like a 20-acre oasis in the middle of Cairo, and that's what this hotel is right on the edge of. And you've seen the American flag waving from what you presume to be the American consulate, and you've seen streets down there lined with storytellers, jugglers, snake charmers, and they're all hoping for the generosity of the tourists that are in this part of the town. So there's a lot to see and do when you need to refresh your mind, if that ever needs to happen for Mr. Stanton. But you also do receive a phone call when you're about to take your lunch.
All right.
Or you're like signaled up
from the office.
From the office where you go down to where they have the phone.
All right, yeah. I think I was probably planning on, if they have a bar in this hotel, maybe sitting around there for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, for my lunch break or something. But yeah, I'll take my call. Stanton.
Mr. Stanton, can you hear me okay? You can tell that it's Lieutenant Rowe.
Yes, Rowe. What is it?
Well, I had been touching up my officer logs and was reminded of a visit from a Montgomery Gallagher, an American businessman who needed my help in obtaining licenses for certain items that were being brought into Port Said. And according to the brief exchange I had with him, he was heading up an expedition to find a sister site to Petra, is what he said, if I remember it correctly. And I was thinking of you as I was touching up those logs and reminded of the encounter and the kinds of things you get into. And I was wondering if this might be a competitor of yours. You had mentioned a city of some kind, but you weren't at liberty to say more. But I thought I might call you up and give you fair warning. Does that name or that city mean anything to you?
Does any of it?
Well, I think you know the name of the city, right? That was shared by Mr. Wentworth?
Yeah.
Like where you're heading. And you know, Petra is in the wrong part of the Arabian Peninsula. It's actually up closer to the Levant in Jordan, or what's called Transjordan in this time period.
Good looking out, Lieutenant Rowe. I'll have some of my men look into it.
All right. Well, I just was curious if he was some competition of yours. He did need, permits for guns, dynamite, and I think I remember them loading a biplane onto the train up to Transjordan. So be advised, if you're going to the same place, you might have a gentleman you have to contend with.
Contest is always the spice of life. Rowe.
Right.
Sorry.
I know you may find that true, and I think I find it true, but on
surprises
most days
are the ones that we must look out for, right?
Yes, of course.
Agreed. Perhaps I'll have... Thank you, Lieutenant Rowe.
Well, good day.
Good day to you. Yes. One problem with having contacts is once you give them their handout, they always come looking back with every little triviality. Yeah, so I'll go into the bar if there's one here, or lounge room.
Yeah, it's one of the few places where you can get a good drink.
Yeah, have a drink and some lunch.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else you wanted to do specifically with that day?
What was his name? Montgomery?
The name he gave you was Montgomery Gallagher, an American businessman.
I think if I see Ibrahim, how much was it? This is my last day here, probably.
Before what?
I leave or I meet up with them.
No, they've still got a little ways to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have Ibrahim look into it, and I'll if Ibrahim's not busy, because the guy's going to a different location, but we might be competing with him for supplies.
Right. Yeah.
At the very least, he might have a little bit better idea of what we're heading into as well. So.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Stanton, you're still on the line there. I forgot to mention this was weeks ago, so.
Okay. He might already be gone.
He had already departed.
All right.
Sorry. I meant to put that detail in there when I was speaking with you, but. I was not reading verbatim.
I'll just take it out of your next bribe.
No.
All right. So, yeah, I won't bring you up to Ibrahim, but yeah, I'll just enjoy my lunch and
okay, and soak up the patina of Cairo as it was in the 1920s. So we will then move on to Wednesday, where Mr. Thompson and Mr. Wentworth this day will see you from Milan, Italy, till Belgrade in the kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes.
Oh, the worst kind of people.
Dr. Andrews knows that this will be called Yugoslavia soon. Or in the near future. But unfortunately, because we have such a short time to play today, we are actually going to have to wrap it up right now. My apologies. I'm trying to anticipate my mom bringing the boys back. So a little closer. Thank you guys for playing. Go ahead and do your luck refresh, and if you had any checks. This has been a Deathwatch production. Thank you for listening.